What's up, fam? Welcome to our home. I am Dr. Damon. This is my beautiful wife.
Shontae.
We are the Smiths. This is Richer or Poor Marriage Podcast where we are contributing to the health and wealth of marriages. You ready, sweetie?
I'm ready.
You ready?
I am ready.
DJ, drop that beat.
Let's go.
Check it. If you have not yet subscribed to the podcast, feel free to click that subscribe, click that like, share it with somebody you know and love. We would love for them to be a part of our Richer or Poor Marriage Podcast family. That's how we doing things in 2024.
Yep, that's it.
So today, we're going to talk a little bit about something that influences everyone. Wouldn't you say?
I would think so.
So we're gonna dive deep into temptations and what temptations look like and how people respond to temptations and how we should react when we fall into temptation or when we are put in position of recognizing temptation. You with it?
I'm with it. Let's go.
All right, let's do it.
Let's go. Let's do it.
Do your thing.
Do my thing.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
All right. So I thought this would be a very interesting conversation on this on tonight. For the simple reason is that we hear about temptations all the time, right? We hear people talking about temptation, but a lot of times we think temptation is sexual temptations most times, right?
For the most part. Sexual temptation in marriage, absolutely.
Yeah. So have you, do you know anybody who has experienced or faced any kind of significant temptation that you could share? Do you know anybody?
What do you mean? I think everybody.
Yes, everybody. See, that's what I was looking for him to say. Everybody. We all face some kind of temptation.
At some point or another. Right. I think that just because you get married doesn't mean you lose your eyesight or you lose the desire to want to be acknowledged or to want to be recognized or to want to be cared for, right? And so in those situations, because you don't lose your eyesight, it's easy to see someone you think is attractive, right? But then the question becomes, yes, that person is attractive, but how do I respond when I recognize that that person is attractive? Or how do I respond because this person makes me feel wanted or needed, right? Because you can come into an environment where, let's say you're in your work environment and there's someone who has taken the time to recognize your contributions to the company or to the job or to the assignment. And because they make you feel cared for or needed, the temptation could rise to act on maybe a level of attraction that you may not normally would have considered or acted on.
Oh, so you trying to go deep real quick?
Nah, I'm just saying, talking about temptation, you wanted to talk about it.
Yeah, I did. So let's talk about what temptation is.
All right,
okay.
well.
So
you tell
temptation.
Me.
So temptation refers to an external or internal influence that entices either one or both partners to engage in behavior that could potentially be harmful to the marriage. And so this could be through actions, right? through thoughts or situations that may challenge their commitment, their trust, and mutual respect within the marriage. So that's what temptation is, right? But we also know that there are different types of temptation, right? There are different types of temptation. And as we said, you talked about, somebody coming up in the spot, and you might take a little notice of them, or they might take a little notice of you, something like that.
Yeah. For me, you know, the way I define it is a little bit different just
Okay.
because I think that temptation is based on a perceived lack. And so, what I mean by that is if you feel like you lack something in a certain area, then you're liable to be tempted by that thing and to fall into that type of temptation. So, for instance, if in our relationship, in our marriage, if I feel like I lack a level of sexual intimacy with you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a perceived lack, then I may look to fulfill that lack outside of our marriage because I see it as a lack in my life. Or let's say I don't get affirmation from you, right? You don't. Now, everybody knows that watches this podcast know that you continually affirm your man. There's
Oh,
no
yeah.
doubt that you care about me and how I feel, and you're going to pump me up even if I'm wrong sometimes. It's no doubt, right? But let's say, in that marriage where you have the one spouse that doesn't get the affirmation that they desire, if someone presents that outside of the relationship, then there's the possibility to be attracted to that
Because you're
and
not
to
getting
fall
it.
into that
Right.
because there's a perceived lack, right? And a lot of that goes back into, communication. But, I was thinking about this topic when you brought it up to me and said we should talk about it. And I was like, man, we should, because a lot of times it's not just sexual. And then it made me think, if you go all the way back to the beginning, right? In the beginning, you have a marriage, a man and a woman that is tempted based on a perceived lack, right? Because they thought, you know, and I ain't trying to be too deep, but the enemy presented the fact that you could be just like God because he's trying to hold something back from you. And so, because they felt like God was trying to hold something back, there was a sense of entitlement that no, this should be mine.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why they decided to eat the fruit of the tree, because they felt like, okay, if he's trying to hold something back, but it's supposed to be mine, then let me go ahead and take what's supposed to be mine. And I think that's what people do when they're faced with temptation, because there's a perceived lack and they feel entitled to what they think they lack, then they'll actually take it and grab a hold of it. So because I feel entitled to sex and you're not giving it to me right now, that's supposed to be mine. And if you're not giving it to me, then I need to go get it from somewhere else. Does that make any type of sense?
It makes
I
sense.
said a mouthful, right?
Yes, you did. It makes sense. So the temptation started at the very beginning.
From the very beginning.
So I guess what we experience wouldn't be no different than from the very beginning. It's
It's
always
nothing
been
new under the
something.
sun.
Yes, yes, yes. But there are, and let's just talk about the piece about, the sexual part. If there was something that you may have been, that has been lacking as far as sex, right? You feel that not you per se,
Mhm.
but that man may feel, or that woman, because women aren't exempt, because women do cheat as well.
Mhm.
And they may feel that if they're not getting something, then they're going to go out and get it from somewhere else. And I do believe that. And I think that's why I'm probably so, um, I'm adamant about making sure that uh, I lift you up, that I, tell you how fine you are, tell you how good you look, because I want to make sure that you get what you need in the house as opposed to waiting until you go outside to get something that you're not getting in the house. So I don't ever want that to be the reason why you feel like it's okay to receive something from somebody else because you may be lacking in the household.
Yeah, and you know, there are a couple reasons why um, people decide to cheat, um, or people go through infidelity within their marriage, and fall into temptation. One of them is that perceived lack, but you also have those people that are afraid of the depth of a relationship. So if you and I are getting closer, right, and it makes me feel uncomfortable to be this close to you, to share so much of myself with you, I may do something to try to sabotage that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so because I feel uncomfortable with the level of expectation you have for me, I may intentionally or unintentionally try to sabotage the relationship we have by looking for an opportunity outside of our marriage. Because I think that what that does is it will free me from um, really the commitment that's necessary to continually build a marriage. And
Mm-hmm.
so when some people are afraid of that level of commitment, and because they're afraid of that level of commitment, any opportunity that presents itself, they'll allow it to tempt them and pull them away because they're afraid of what they have to give up if they get closer to that spouse or mate.
Right, but you're married to him. So why would you feel like you couldn't give that part of yourself to him? You
I
you
mean,
said I do.
that's true. That's
So
true.
I would think that if you said I do, then there should be a part of you that should be able to give all of that to your spouse. Wouldn't you think? I would think so. I
You
mean,
would think.
and I know people have other things that may be going on in their life, or that even some trauma may have prevented them from being able to talk about certain things and share certain things. So, I mean, I do understand that. But of course, infidelity is one of the number one uh, types of temptations, right? That infidelity comes from being
Tempted.
tempted, right?
Right.
So that would be one of those things that we hear about, that infidelity a lot, right? We hear about infidelity, and when you talk about when you think about infidelity, we always like to think about infidelity as a physical thing, but sometimes infidelity can be an emotional thing as well. And based on what I've heard, what I've been told, is that that emotional um, that emotional connection can sometimes be can be bigger than that physical part.
So
So
let
what are
me
your
ask you
thoughts on
this.
that?
No, before
Oh,
I give you
what?
my thoughts, let me
Okay.
ask you this, because we always hear that for men, sex is just sex. So typically, it's typically said that a man can be involved in a sexual relationship, and after he's had sex, he can get up and go about his business. And then we hear the opposite side of that, whereas you have a woman who's involved in a sexual relationship, and typically she has to connect emotionally to participate in that sexual relationship. So there's more of an emotional connection that has to take place prior to that. Number one, have you heard that? And number two, do you necessarily agree with that or do you disagree? And then, if so, we can take it from there because it's different for everybody.
Yeah, men can be a little weird sometimes. I don't know what God was thinking when he created y'all sometimes. We thank God for y'all, but I mean, that's like no emotional connection when you have sex with somebody. It's just crazy to me. But for women, we are we are emotional beings, right? We lead without feelings, we lead without emotions. And I think a lot of times we get, because we are emotionally connected, and a lot of times from the very beginning, right? Because we can see somebody and be like, oh, he cute, and you be like, and you may like the way he look, and you may like the way he treats you, and then it becomes and even the way he treats you may not be for a long period of time. It may not even be a closeness that you would even consider a closeness, but there is a connection, sometimes in how they greet you or sometimes in how they look at you, right? And so sometimes it can be easy for us to have that emotional connection, just based on that first encounter. I really don't know. I can only just say, we're emotional, and we lead without emotions. We lead without feelings. And a lot of times that's what get us in trouble.
Right. So I've heard this many times. It's like if two people are married and if the man cheats, it's like it was just sex. But if the woman cheats, it was more of an
They,
emotional connection, and so they've already pretty much left the marriage because they emotionally connected to somebody.
who, the woman?
Yeah.
I know women are more prone to do that, but men are as well.
I'm just,
Men are too. They can emotionally connect as well.
yeah,
Even
I believe that. I mean, we got here because we was talking about temptation and actually the infidelity
I know,
that
but I'm just
seems to
saying, you just
linger
making
after
it seem like
temptation.
women is the one, we always the one that's connected, emotionally connected and all that stuff. Men get in their feelings too.
I'm not saying they don't.
But
I'm just telling you
I know,
what was out there in the world.
yeah, I'm just feeling,
Because people will always say, a man will cheat because that's his nature. But if a woman cheats, then it's not necessarily, they don't consider that her nature. That's what they say. But I think it's everyone's nature to notice someone who's attractive or to notice someone that makes them feel good about themselves. Everybody does that. But the question is, when you're presented with that, how do you respond? Like, there are consequences for every action, right?
right, there
And
is.
so it's like, how do you respond when you come up into those situations when you recognize, ooh, this person makes me feel a little different?
Right.
What am I going to do? Am I going to act on it? Or am I going to
Listen,
resist it?
I say resist it. I say run. I say run because, for me, I'm like, I'm a firm believer about not putting yourself in certain situations.
We all know this.
I am a firm believer of that. So if you feel as though you are attracted to someone and there are some feelings or something there, then you need not to put yourself in that situation. You need to remove yourself by all means necessary. I can't talk to you. I can't be around you. Whatever it takes, that's what you need to do to remove yourself from the situation. Because if you are in that environment and you know you're feeling a certain kind of way, and there's the potential of that person know that you're feeling a certain kind of way, then that's when those two emotions are going to then collide, and then you allow something to happen. So I would say run.
So you ever been in that situation?
I have not since I've been married. No.
Oh, okay. It's always good to have these conversations because if you don't talk about it, then things can grow on the inside.
Right. And I was having a conversation the other day. Was it the other day? Yeah, I was having a conversation, and we were with Dr. Shahrazad, and we were talking about basically we are happy that we can have a open dialogue with our spouse. So I can talk to you pretty much about anything, right? And I can tell you how I'm feeling. And I think that's very important, that if there is an attraction with another person, man or female, and I should be able to come to you and tell you that they tried to holler at me, or I was feeling a certain kind of way with them. And I think having that open dialogue will begin to let the spouse know that, hey, I just want you to know that this is how I'm feeling. This is where I'm at. And then that will allow you to say, to get a little deeper and be like, well, why? Why am I feeling like this? Why am I attracted to this person? Why? And so it will cause you just to dive a little deeper into that feeling and that emotion that you may be having, especially if it's new, right?
Right.
I mean, I have not, in our almost 22 years of marriage, I have not been attracted to a person to the point where attracted to anybody. I can honestly say that. Now, of course, we see people and you be like, hey, you might have in your mind.
Hold on.
In your head, you might be.
Hold up. Did y'all see that reaction? Like, oh, hey.
I'm saying you might have.
Lord have mercy. I'm glad we're doing this. Because if the whole picture was painted, my wife would try to make it seem like it was just me.
Listen, I have never thought that you were blind. I never thought that you were blind, that you could see, and you need to wear some glasses like
DMT.
I never thought that. But I also believe that even though you may see somebody you may see somebody, that doesn't mean that you focus on that person. Because I done seen it many a times, men with women, and they are staring at men with women, and their man is staring at another woman. I think that is the most disrespectful thing that I have ever seen. I just think it's disgusting. You with your spouse and you're looking at another woman and you are staring them down. That is disrespectful. That is disgusting. And I don't like it. Okay. It just frustrates me so much.
But
I know I'm in my feelings right now. It just makes me so mad.
But I have told you that you aren't a mind reader too. So you don't know what
yes,
people...
I know. You in this mind reading
I'm just saying.
I know I'm not a mind
somebody
reader.
could be looking like they're staring at someone, but they could actually be looking through them.
Or
they
could
be focused on their vision for the future, and they off in a place where God is showing them what the future looks like, and they're completely engulfed in it, but it looks like they're looking at somebody.
Sir, the people that I have seen, they have been staring at other women while they were with their wife, their girlfriend, or whomever. Is disrespectful. And I think that if that is something that you do not have any control of, you still need to be mindful of your surroundings. You need to be mindful of who you are with, because it's disrespectful, and I don't appreciate it. And they not even my man, and I'm mad.
Well, can we bring it back down?
I'm
of
just saying.
10
I don't even know
to
how.
about a 3 so we could get back into this conversation, please.
Yes.
Oh, Lord Jesus. So, something you said was that your preferred response to temptation is to completely remove yourself
Remove myself.
from that situation. I can think back to, we've been married 22 years, and I think back to when I was in medical school,
Mm-hmm.
and at the time we had one car, right? And so because we only had one car, you would drop me off at the school in the morning because you had the children and you would, take them to school, and some days you have to work. And so, or you were going to school and then you were responsible for picking them up because I was basically away all day. And so eventually we got to a point where, because I was spending so much time in the library, right? Basically, I would shut the library down
Mm-hmm.
at night, and I would need a ride home. But you guys would already be either in bed. Of course, the kids would be in bed, but you were either on your way to bed or waiting for me to get in before you went to bed. And so I had a friend, right? A good friend, offer to give me a ride home because she lived not too far from us. And so I remember us sitting down having a conversation. Like, at first you were like, no, you were not riding with no woman at this time of night because they could say or do anything. And I'm
Because
like, and I'm like, sweetie, you know this person,
I did not know her like that initially.
right? I'm saying you know this person, and you know me. So either you have to trust in the fact that you know me, and we move from there. But I'm using that story as an example for your point. You were of the mindset that I should not put myself in that situation, and I'm like, sweetie, I need to get home.
Hi, wake
And
me
then
up.
eventually, we got to the point where you were like, it was okay because you.
I never got to the point where it
Yes,
was
it was.
okay.
Kenya was giving me a ride home from school. What are you talking about?
I don't know. When she was bringing you home,
It was okay for me to get a ride.
I had a problem with it. Now, mind y'all, we
The
are
whole
good.
time?
Mind y'all, we are good friends. Now, we are good friends. I did not know her like that. And what I said was, although your intentions are well, I don't know her like that. And I think a lot of times men will put themselves in some vulnerable situations, some bad situations where it's not that I had to worry about you. I didn't know her. And so if I'm okay, I trust my husband. I trusted you then and I trust you now. But it wasn't you that I was worried about. It was this unknown person that I did not know about. And although your intentions were good intentions, right? You ain't see nothing wrong with it. But as I said, I believe that we need to be very careful about situations that we put ourselves in. Now, I don't remember. I just remember us getting another car. I don't remember me being okay with it. I don't recall.
Well,
But if you say I was eventually
were.
okay with it.
Because it happened for quite a bit of time. But what I will say this.
But I wound up, I said, no. I said, wake me up. And I was,
No, you ain't.
yes,
I
sweetie.
didn't wake you up every night. Come on to come get me because I was at the
I didn't come and
library.
get you every-
No, you didn't. Not no 12 o'clock at night. No, you didn't.
I don't. Okay. But,
No, you
okay.
didn't.
I don't recall.
Now you just say you don't recall.
Yeah, I don't recall
because
that.
you don't.
Because I do not. Because I was really against that. I really was. But anywho.
But before you move on, what I will say is this. From my perspective, I always felt as if it's like, okay, I understand you trust me, but at some point in time, you also have to trust my judgment, right? And we've had conversations about this many times because I've always been of the mindset like, yeah, I hear you, I hear what you're saying, and a lot of times I have removed myself from certain situations, or I have like severed some friendships, but I've always had the conversation with you that I hear you, I love you, I respect what you have to say. It mean, and I'm always going to honor you, but I also need you not only to trust me, but trust my judgment and my ability to assess the character of someone and to say, okay, I'm in a good position. I know who this person is. And I trust the fact that they're not going to put me in a bad situation, just like I'm not going to put them in a bad situation, if that makes any sense. It does to me. That's usually
It's a no
that's
for
usually the
me.
response I get. But we've had this conversation many, 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 many times, and I already know how she feels. So because I know that, I try to honor those feelings and I will respect them. And for the most part,
You do.
I will not put myself in those situations. But when I was in medical school, we were getting out of the library. It was like midnight. And no, I wasn't calling you at midnight to come pick me up when the children were in bed. She lived around the corner. She dropped me off. That was that.
It
And
wasn't that.
let's move on because that was that. You just don't remember.
I do not recall.
It's okay.
I do not recall. I remember us getting another car, and then I was, we taking turns and whatever. But I do not recall that.
That's okay. That's all right.
So, ladies, do not put yourself in situations that may compromise your marriage. Uh, and men, do not put yourself in a situation that may compromise your marriage. And I believe that putting yourselves in situations with the opposite sex, no matter what it is, can cause a situation. And sometimes there's a situation that you may not even know that could occur. And there may be a situation that you didn't even contemplate or ever thought you would occur. That didn't make sense.
No,
But
it's possible.
I'm just saying, I just don't listen. I don't put yourself in that situation. That's all. But we're gonna move on from this part. Is it okay? But even, when we're talking about these temptations, there are a number of temptations, right? That people may deal with in a marriage, right? And the infidelity, that's a temptation. Um, we talked about the emotional and the physical affairs, right? Then you got your financial issues. These disagreements over spending, saving, and who's in charge of the money, all of that, right? Those are some things that can be common temptations as well. Communication breakdown. In marriages, sometimes there is not effective communication. We talk about communication every podcast, right? And I'm like,
Yeah.
I know people tired of hearing about communication, but communication is key in a marriage. It is key. If you don't have communication, then you're going to be lacking something. You're going to be lacking a lot if you don't have communication, because if you don't have effective communication, it can lead to what? Miscommunication, right?
Yes. Or no
Or
communication.
no communication, right? So,
A great example is the conversation we just had, right? And communication, we talk about it a lot, but it's much more than just talking because it's about not only what's being said, but it's about what's being heard and actually processing what's being said and what's being heard, and then giving it back to the person the way you received it. See, sometimes what happens is someone can say something, and because I heard it and processed it in a way that was not the intended way of the speaker, then I could give it back in a way that wasn't necessarily the intended response. And so that's what creates miscommunication. But that's why it's important to continually have that dialogue so you get to know one another, you understand one another. And sometimes you have to actually sit and listen and process what someone is saying versus thinking about what you're going to say while they're still talking, right? Because we get caught in that trap too, where it's like, all right, I know she's talking. Let me wait for her to finish so I can say what I need to say.
You talking about
And
me?
I ain't hear nothing you
You
said.
talking about me?
I'm saying if the shoe and the tiara fit, wear both.
Yes, I have worn both. I have been. I'm guilty.
Because
of
you
that.
are the queen.
I'm guilty of that.
Wear the crown. Nah, but we talk about communication a lot because it's essential in a marriage, and especially when you're talking about dealing with temptation, because you don't want to necessarily hide that from your spouse. You want to be able to have an open, honest conversation about what you may see or experience or feel, so that you can grow, or so that you can identify the underlying issues
That part.
that may be causing you to have those feelings or desires.
Yes, I
Right?
absolutely agree.
And so that's why talking about it is important,
Very important.
because we help one another get to the bottom of it.
And we're good. I can say that we're good at, talking about certain things. We talk about everything, just about. And I do believe that you are very mindful of your behavior now. You're mindful of your behavior.
I don't like how that sounds. I'm mindful of my behavior.
Yeah, I'm
Now,
talking about-
hold on. I'm mindful of my behavior now.
Yes, from
Like
years.
I wasn't mindful of my behavior then.
Right, but I talk about all the way down the street 2 miles. But you said it was the outfit that, you was checking out the
Lord
outfit to
Jesus.
give me, you see,
So are you mindful of your behavior now?
I'm working.
Or you always been?
What you mean?
I'm just saying, you acting like,
People around me?
no, not,
Or just mindful of my behavior,
yes.
period?
Are you mindful now versus then?
I've gotten a lot better, yes. Yeah, I have.
I'm just curious.
I know
Like if I'm mindful now and I wasn't mindful then, I sure hope you mindful now.
Yes. Yes. Also, one thing that I know we talk about, like, those things that may be temptations, that may be things that may be current in a marriage, right? People are dealing with all types of stuff that are current now in a marriage, but there are also things that people are currently going through now. Let me just say that. Currently going through now, that is due to past experiences, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like alcohol, right? Alcohol abuse, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so because they had an alcohol addiction in their past, or drug addiction, sexual addiction, any kind of addiction, abuse issues, right, from the past, for whatever reason that they may have had them, sometimes they tend to bring that into their now, and that becomes an issue in the marriage because of it being there previously. So that's a biggie too. And sometimes we think that, those temptations just have to be, infidelity, sex. No, there are other temptations as well, right? Time management, spouses that don't know how to manage their time because they're so focused on work. They so focused on going out and getting the bag, right? That they forget about their spouse, and that could go either way with the male or female. There are just so many different ways. What do you think about? Let's talk about that right quick. About the spouse that don't seem to know how to manage their time with their spouse. They're more worried about, as they say, getting the bag. And I know they gotta feed their families and provide and do all of that. But what about the ones that put their jobs before their spouses? What can you say to that? Because we had to put boundaries in place as well for that, right? We come home talking about job, 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 office, 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 and sometimes we let that trump what we had going on at times. But what you think on that?
I think that, you know, so first of all, like you said, there could be many reasons for temptation. You can have a previous experience that you thought you were free from,
Yep.
and you can always be tempted to go back.
Mm-hmm.
You use alcohol addiction or drug addiction or,
Sex addiction.
some type of sexual addiction or, even anger issues, and all those things can present themselves in the present when we thought we moved on, right?
Mm-hmm.
I like to say it like this. The enemy we face is a champion too. So even though we're champions on the inside and we are more than conquerors, the enemy we face, he's a champion too. And because he's a champion too, he's going to take the time to prepare, just like you have two boxers going into a boxing ring that are champions, right? They're both going to prepare to win because they won before. And so when the enemy comes to attack us, he's going to come to attack us with something he's seen work before. And so because he's seen it work before, that's why he's going to throw it back at us.
Yep.
It doesn't matter how far we get in life. He's like, I saw them fall to this before. Let me try it again. And so that's how temptation presents itself. It's like, okay, are they going to fall into that same trap again? Whether it's alcohol addiction, drug addiction, sexual addiction, whether it's anger issues, hurt issues, communication issues, whatever it may be. It happens. And you asked specifically about people who choose to put or to allow the temptation of financial gain to be the major priority in their life versus their spouse and their family. And so for me personally, my priority has always been God, family, business. That's always been my priority. God, family, business. God, family, business. God within the family, my spouse, then my children, then my business. So it's God, my spouse, my children, business. That's always been my priorities, right? And the reason that's my priorities is because I know what the word says, and I believe what the word says. The word says, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. So if my pursuit first is him, then everything else that I desire will be added unto me if I am obedient and walking out the steps that he gives me as I seek and pursue him. So, I always have to give the caveat of this is how I live my life because I've seen the benefits of doing it that way. I've seen the benefits of what it looks like to put God first in my life and then to allow everything else to fall after that. I understand that the word says, he who finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor with the Lord. So for me, after I've sought God first, I have to understand that my favor, that comes from my wife,
I'm it.
right?
I'm that it.
That's
I'm
what
the
I
it girl.
believe.
I'm the
So,
favor.
so you become my priority. We joked about this in the last podcast when you asked the question about, you know, my daughter asked who comes first, her or you, and I said hands down you all day, every day. But that's the truth.
That's the truth.
But and that's whether it's family or business. Yes, it's important to build something because you want to provide for your family, but it should never be at the cost of your family,
Yes.
right? It should never be at the cost of your family. Yes, you can build, but you have to understand what the priority is. And I don't think you ever want to be in the situation where you've built something to the point where you've seen it grow and flourish, and then you turn around and you've lost those who are most close to you or most important to you. And I've heard too many stories about physicians that are so focused on their medical careers and they put so much energy into their research or into their practice that they lose their families. And to me, in those conversations, yes, they'll try to make it seem as if they're excited about their accomplishments, but in the end, when they turn back and look, the thing they most regret is the fact that they lost relationships with their spouse and with their children because their priority was building something that would potentially not last.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I have to say about the matter.
That's good. So, it, as a spouse, man, the woman or the man, do you think that recognize we should recognize signs of temptation from our spouse
Recognize signs of temptation.
mm-hmm. before it gets larger? Like, because with women, we be like, something ain't right. Like, I'm feeling it in my gut. Like, something's wrong. Like, we don't talk the way that we used to talk. He don't give me that time that he used to give me. We don't have sex like we used to. It's like something is off. And sometimes for women, we can't seem to pinpoint like what it is, like what is off, but we know something is off because our gut is telling us something. Do you think that, and I'm a firm believer that I'm learning now to go with my gut, right? And most times my gut don't lie. So if I'm feeling a certain kind of way, most times that is it. So how do you feel about this gut thing as far as like for us as women, we know something's off. They act different. They don't touch me like they used to. They coming in late. It's something off, like, and you just can't pinpoint it. So those can be signs, right? But they also could be signs that something else is going on, right? Because I'm not a mind reader.
Thank you.
I don't read minds.
I see it's starting to sink in, y'all.
I don't read minds.
It's starting to sink in. No, I mean, I was gonna say, you just read my mind. No, I was gonna say, a lot of times we do have these gut responses, but we don't necessarily know until we know. Like, you can have an idea that something may be happening or something is different, But unless you have the conversation or you catch someone red-handed, then all it is a gut feeling. And it could be many causes of that. Like, for instance, you let's say, for the marriage, that the relationship where the sex is not where it was, right? And the woman is like, something's going on. We aren't doing it like we used to. I said doing it. We aren't having sex like we used to. What's going on? He must be seeing someone else, and it's not that. He's afraid to tell you that he needs to see the doctor because he doesn't feel confident enough to perform the way he used to. And so, because he's not confident and he's not necessarily meeting your expectation or fulfilling your need, he may decide, no, let me just chill until I figure out what's going on. But that's where communication comes in.
Exactly.
And so if people aren't talking, then assumptions are made. And, I'm not making excuses for nobody, because in some cases, yes, they may have wandered and they may have fallen into temptation. They may be sleeping with somebody else. But in other cases, it could be many other things. It could be, I could be worried about something financially, and that's where my focus is. And so instead of me being able to give you my full attention, because I know we have a ton of bills coming up, that's where my thought life is. I'm like, I don't feel like being bothered right now. To you, it's like, oh, why doesn't he want me? It's not that I don't want you. I do want you. But my mind is on everything we need to get done, and I can't like focus on like pleasing you right now. And so having that ability to talk to one another and say that, and you have to be very mindful about how you say certain things, but having the relationship and the safe space to have those type of conversations can help someone and prevent them from actually, going into the mind frame of, oh no, it has to be somebody else, versus no, there's something more serious going on, and I just haven't been able to get my mind into the place where I can fully give myself. Now, yeah, we can engage in sex, but you're not gonna really enjoy it. I'm not gonna really enjoy it because my mind not in it. You're not gonna enjoy it because you see I'm not in it, and you're gonna be like, why he not in it? And so, you know, that's why it's important to have those conversations, to talk about those things.
Yeah, it's true. But what about the couples that are not necessarily having those, those type of temptation issues, right? What if they're like with this between the husband and the wife, right? But what if they are having temptations about abuse, the things that they done in the past, and drugs and alcohol and sexual temptations? How when should they really seek help elsewhere? Would you think? What could you say on that?
I think they should seek help now. Like, you don't want to wait. Um, some people feel like they can wait because they think it's going to get better. And the waiting, all it does is it provides time and opportunity for things to get worse. And so I think there has to be a sense of urgency to be willing, number one, to ask for help, and to seek help.
Yeah, to admit they need help, right? That should be first.
There's a level of self-awareness that has to take place.
Yeah.
So that means you have to have an honest conversation with yourself.
With yourself. And then after you have a conversation with yourself, then you should be able to have an honest conversation with your spouse, so that you two will be on the same page no matter what, because that's what um, marriage is about, is being able to have a open dialogue, communication with your spouse, and talk about things that's going to make you uncomfortable sometimes, even if it's things that that maybe from your past, maybe bringing temptation to you now in whatever form that may be, so that you can get help, so that you can move forward. And even if forgiveness have to take place in those things, in those areas, right? So it's just so many different things that you have to consider when it comes to different, when it comes to temptation. So,
Yeah, I think that what you said is correct. It requires a level of self awareness, meaning that you have to have an honest conversation with yourself. You have to be truthful with yourself, and you have to really admit that, okay, I need help in this area. Now that I've identified the fact that I need help, then I have to have a level of trust in my spouse to be able to share that. And if I don't have that trust, then I need to find someone that I can trust, that I can share that with, so that I can ultimately get to the place where I can share it with my spouse. I think that some relationships, um, you people always say they want honesty in a relationship, but there are times when people cannot necessarily handle honesty in their relationship. And so some people have to be given the space or given the right approach to present certain information so that the person receiving it can handle it.
it's true.
And so sometimes it may not be an initial direct conversation with the spouse. It may be someone who can serve as a buffer or to serve as a counselor, to serve as, if you need therapy, some people may need professional counseling or help. And then going through that process may enable them to have those conversations with their spouse. That's why I would suggest doing it sooner than later, because the longer things persist, the more people grow apart.
Yes, absolutely.
And so if you're continually growing apart, it becomes more difficult to get back to that place of center and get back together. And so that's why I think it should happen sooner than later.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And even for the ones that have really succumbed to those temptations, right? And so, with succumbing to some of those temptations, there will be a period of rebuilding the trust, right? And with building that trust, there are some things that, that comes along with building that trust. We talked about open communication, right? And then actually having a sincere apology with your spouse. Apologize. Be sincere, about what you have done that may have hurt your spouse, right? Because we have to take what? Responsibility, accountability for our actions and what has hurt our spouse, right? So we got to do that. And we talked about the seeking the counseling, right? Get some help.
Yeah. And I think, to run it all the way back or to take it all the way back to the beginning, you have to be mindful of the fact that there's always consequences for your actions.
Yes.
And so taking ownership means that you understand not only how this will affect me and my relationship, but it's also going to affect those people that are around me in our relationship. And so understanding that there's a consequence for every action and actually taking the time to think about, okay, what's the potential consequence if I do this? What's the loss? Can I handle the loss? Is it worth that? And after you've done that, hopefully you come to the realization that it's not worth the loss.
It's not worth the
And you
loss.
choose to do something different, or you choose to remove yourself from that situation. You choose to say no, and to find, um, you know, the Bible says resist the enemy and he will flee. You know, you gotta reject temptation.
You got to reject it.
I think Jesus was the one that said, "Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil." So,
Mm-hmm.
understanding that temptation is going to present itself, but what do you do when it presents itself?
Right. And I think, we have to, as married couples, as we have to establish boundaries, right? There are certain things that I know as a wife that I'm just not going to do. I'm not going to allow. I'm not going to allow anything to jeopardize what I have. And I know what I have. And I am not willing to jeopardize what I have. I work too hard for what I have. I put too much time into it. And I'm not willing to jeopardize that for anybody. So I think, establishing those boundaries is important. And, we have to, when you do things that succumb to this temptation, right, to this stuff, that you have to make changes, right? We got to make changes. We're going to be forever changing throughout our marriage. So you got to make changes. You can't when you succumb to those temptations, you can't put a deadline on things. If you're not the one that it happened to you, but you're not the one that actually did it, you can't put a time frame on it. You can put prayer on it, but you can't put a time frame on it. And you have to allow that person to forgive at the right time, right? And you have to be patient with that spouse so that you can build.
Absolutely. We good?
We good.
Look, y'all, I always gotta ask, are we good?
That's another thing. Like, that is another thing. Making sure that you have check-ins. Like, do you check in with your spouse to ask, are we good? Do you check in with your spouse? Do you ask your husband? Do you ask your wife, are we good? Is this something that I can improve on? Is it something that I can be better? Is it something that I'm not doing that I could be doing? Check-ins are vital to a marriage. And one thing I can say, we check in. Because if something ain't right, he gonna hit.
You say I'm gonna hear it?
He gonna hit. Because I'm gonna be like, I'm gonna say something, right? Well, what's wrong with you? Why are you acting like that? Check-ins. Make sure you do your check-ins. Ladies, gentlemen, husbands, wives, make sure you do your check-ins.
Well, we hope we didn't bore you with our love. We hope we didn't bore you with our laughter. We hope we didn't bore you with our stories. This is Ritual Poor Marriage Podcast, where we are helping to build healthy, wealthy marriages. Until next time, be blessed, fam.